Have you ever thought about milking sheep? As a child, I grew up on a sheep farm in Southland, New Zealand. I shifted swede brakes in the cold, bleak winter. I crutched, I shore, well I rousied. I ate sheep meat and I wore sheep wool. Proudly, I must add. But I never ever tasted sheep milk. Why is the question? We've got 30 million sheep in New Zealand, and yet we only have 5 sheep dairy farms. Why aren't we milking them? Globally, they've been milking sheep for thousands of years. In fact, 3 of the world's most revered cheeses are made of sheep milk: Roquefort, Pecorino, and Manchego. It's a very healthy product, superior nutritionally, and it caters to the rapidly growing lactose intolerant market, particularly in Asia. It's fashionable. Demand for artisan dairy is growing around 20% per annum, and sheep milk powder prices have risen 50% over the past 3 years. That's the family farm. From a farming perspective, it's environmentally potentially easier on the land than bovine dairy. In fact, in Taupō, in the central northern plateau, where the land's not suitable for bovine dairy because of nitrate caps, they put in a sheep dairy farm. So it's environmentally potentially easier on the land. It's got a faster return on investment than cow dairy. And in a sector where in New Zealand in particular, obviously not in Australia, returns are quite low for meat, a third income stream could bolster revenue. So why did I get interested in sheep dairy? I actually set up a food cluster in Wairarapa, where I currently live, which is just north of Wellington. And in this food cluster, there was about 12 small artisan food and beverage producers, ranging from olive oil to chutneys to cheese to wine. By far, the standout product in our portfolio was sheep cheese. We couldn't keep up with demand. We were selling it into over 140 high-end retail outlets and restaurants, and the demand was extremely strong. So that whet my appetite for the sector. So for my Nuffield, I decided to study sheep milk farming and marketing in 6 countries, and I'm going to give you a snapshot. This is what I learned. In France, it's all about tradition. I met with a 20th generation family farmer, Guillaume, and he was based in the Midi-Pyrenees. He farms the Lequan. Lequan is the breed that he uses. It's got high fat and protein, which makes fantastic cheese, and it's been bred for quick letdown of milk, so he can do his flock of 425 ewes in just over an hour. He's one of 1,700 suppliers to Roquefort cheese, and that product sells in New Zealand for $140 a kg. You can get a block of mild dairy cow cheese for $10, so $140 is quite a premium. Roquefort is a great example of farmer collaboration to produce one of the world's most revered brands and one of the oldest brands. The US is the largest consumer of sheep cheese in the world, and yet the industry is extremely artisan. There's over 100 sheep dairies, but most of them have flocks of around 20 to 30, and they're mainly used for artisanal cheese. There's only 3 sheep dairies over 1,000 ewes in size, and I'm at one of them in California. Haverton Hill Creamery is run by these 2 young entrepreneurs. They're both in their 20s, and they've got a vertically integrated business. They've partnered with Whole Foods in the States, which is one of the most premium supermarket chains. And as you can see, they're getting quite a premium for their milk. This was the most expensive liquid sheep milk I saw on the market at $10.99 US a quart. And as you can see, it also gets quite a premium over goat milk. In Switzerland, it's all about luxury, from its watches to its chocolates to its farms. I met with Rito Wafer, a young farmer who had converted his father's dairy cow operation into sheep dairy. He only had 20 hectares, and he is now one of 6 milk suppliers to a cheese maker that sells through Migros supermarket chains. I did the figures. He's got 200 Laquan ewes, and he gets 317,000 New Zealand dollars in milk income alone. It was the most expensive sheep milk that I saw around the world at the farm gate. And that's not to mention his income from meat and wool, a little bit from wool, and also farm subsidies. Whilst up in Switzerland, I also talked to Emmy Group, which is, as you will probably know, is a huge dairy conglomerate, and they have recently purchased 70% of a Dutch-based sheep and goat trading business, AVH. When I asked them why, they said it's because of the growth in artisan cheese internationally and also the demand from the dairy intolerant. Of course, sheep milk has lactose, but the fat globules are smaller, making it easier to digest. And when I talked to the largest sheep dairy in New Zealand, they said they've never had any issues with lactose intolerant people drinking sheep milk. In Italy, it's about terroir, and terroir, as you'll know, is a word that's usually described to use the conditions that make great wine. But in Italy, it's all about the provenance of the product. And of course, in Italy, there's a lot of herbs that the sheep eat. In the farm that I worked on, they'd done some research, and in 1 metre square, there are 120 different species of plants. So the sheep eat the herbs, they call them herbs over there, and of course that flavours the milk, which flavours the cheese. And each cheese is denominationally protected. As I mentioned, the farm that I worked at in Italy, as a woofer actually, that was the only way I could gain access to it initially, was called La Porta de Parchi, and they had goats, sheep, pigs, tourism. They had both accommodation and a restaurant, so they had various different income streams. But one of the marketing initiatives I really liked was Adopt a Sheep, whereby city slickers could pay anywhere between 50 and 150 euros up front, and in return they'd get meat, wool, cheese, and any other byproducts that the sheep produces. It was a great way to get close to the consumer, get maximum margin, and get great revenue streams for the business. Up in the UK, I attended the British Sheep Dairy Association, and I described the industry up there as emerging. There are a lot of sheep dairies going in, but they're all, again, quite small, with around about 150 stock units. Simon Stott was a really interesting farmer that I met, another young farmer. He was actually Conventional Sheep Farmer of the Year in 2011 in the UK, and he's diversified into sheep dairy, and he's getting some of the highest averages from his sheep. Milk averages, that is. But what really interested me was that he cobbled together 9 sheep dairies in the northern part of the UK under the banner of Sheep Milk UK, and he was selling those into 19 dairies. So what he was doing was providing quality assurance and consistency of supply and price for both the supplier and the dairy, which was enabling the industry to grow significantly in that region of the UK. In Israel, it's all about efficiency. They have a motto that if you can't measure it, you can't monitor it. And as you can see from this picture, they're all of the ewes there are electronically identified and hooked up to milk meters. They know exactly when the ewe was born. They know how many lambs it's had, how many times it's been artificially inseminated, how much milk it produced that morning, that evening, that year, that lifetime. And as a result of that, they can make breeding decisions and culling decisions. The industry in Israel is really sophisticated, and even though they've got desert-based sort of an environment, but I guess they have been shepherds since biblical times. In Israel, everything gets sold to Nuva, which is their big, large dairy company, which has recently been bought by the Chinese. And the sheep milk is turned into feta, which is consumed both domestically and exported to the largest market for sheep cheese, the USA. The Asaf breed here that you see is actually a cross between the German East Frisian and the preferred Middle Eastern Awassi, fat tail. And I actually tried some of the asaf meat and it's delicious. It's got a marbling, almost like a Wagyu equivalent, very tasty. They put a lot of demand on the animals. They have 3 lambings in 2 years, and they get about 55% of their income from meat and 45% from milk. And lastly, the New Zealand industry, which I would describe as a scale industry. As I mentioned, we've got 5 sheep dairies, yet we have the biggest in the world. Down in Southland at Aotearoa Ag, there's 20,000 ewes being milked on 3 farms. And just in the newspaper 2 days ago, they've said that they've got their approval to send infant formula up into China, which means that they're going to scale that up to 100,000 ewes. So a huge operation. The next biggest in New Zealand's got about 3,000 sheep. So yes, we have a very small industry, but globally we've got the biggest farm. So how do I summarise all of my travels into one 20-page document that's going to be useful to New Zealand agriculture? I decided to write a business plan for the New Zealand sheep dairy sector. Because without a plan and without goals, it's very hard to get action. Now, my plan was targeted at business people, farmers, media, and food producers. Anyone interested in the industry that wanted to get a quick snapshot of what's happening domestically and internationally. Like most business plans, which you all should have, it has a vision, a mission, key objectives for both short-term and long-term, a SWOT analysis looking at the internal and external strengths and opportunities, competitor analysis based on my travels around the world, a marketing plan, budgets and implementation plan. The plan shows where the industry is, where it could be, and how we're going to get there. And I set myself a big, hairy, ambitious goal for the industry, that by 10 years we'll get to $1 billion. How? Through genetics, research and development, education and training. We need people to man all of these sheep dairies. Innovative product development that focuses on the functional benefits of New Zealand sheep milk. A niche market focus so that we get the highest returns, and industry collaboration so that we share information. In New Zealand, we consider ourselves good dairy farmers and great sheep farmers. So we need to combine those two and adapt. To break down that $1 billion goal, how does that look in practical terms? It's 900 farmers with 1,000 ewes each, producing average of 600 litres per ewe per year at a farm gate value of $2 a litre, which is the current farm gate value in New Zealand. That's $1 billion industry, and it accounts for about a 5% conversion of our current sheep industry. Globally, sheep milk generated $8 billion in sales last year, but most of that was consumed domestically within the countries it was produced. Only 650 million was exported. So if my goal comes to fruition, then that will mean we'll have 1/8 of the industry. So what's happening in New Zealand subsequent to my Nuffield travels? Firstly, corporate farming group, Landcorp, who you may have heard of, they're the government's farms, and the biggest farming group in the country, have entered the sheep dairy industry. They've put in a 3,000 stock unit operation in Taupo, and they started milking 2 weeks ago for the first time. They've managed to headhunt the head of the British Sheep Dairy Association, John Ryrie, so that we can capture some of that intelligence. And that's given a lot of credibility to the space. When a big farming group like that enter it, people start to take note. International partners are investing in the sheep dairy space. The 2 largest sheep dairies have now been partnered with the Chinese. The farm that I talked about in Southland the marketing and processing part has been bought by the Chinese, and that's enabled them market access predominantly for their infant formula. And in Taupo, they've also partnered with a Chinese marketing company. Maori, or Maoris as you people call them over here, have invested in sheep dairy in Taupo, and Maori of course are the second biggest landowners next to the Crown, so they have a huge amount of energy going on in the agri space. So they've invested in sheep dairy. Close to home, where I live in Masterton, there was one sheep dairy prior to my Nuffield, and now we've got 3. We had an inaugural sheep dairy conference in March, and we're expecting about 100 to turn up, and we had close to 200, including some of the chairs and board members of our key agricultural businesses and communities. Subsequent to that, we set up a steering committee, and we're looking at forming a New Zealand Sheep Milk Association. Genetics, there's heaps going on in the genetics space. Companies have purchased the last of the embryos that Jock Allison brought in 20 years ago, the East Frisian embryos, and trying to grow the industry as quickly as possible from a genetic perspective. And prices of hoggets have increased in value in 1 year from $150 to 500 New Zealand dollars, which is quite outstanding. There is a limited cap of East Frisians, which the preferred milking variety in New Zealand. There's only about 25,000 of them at present. Our government has invested in the industry. They've put $5 million into different research projects around sheep milk. And media coverage, we've had a huge amount of free media coverage. Every paper wants to write up this opportunity for New Zealand ag. Close to home, one of my close friends has moved from the horticultural industry where she was working. She's trained at Telford in sheep farming, and now she's got a job at Landcorp in their lamb raising department. Her father, who's an agricultural businessman, I told him about my Nuffield report. He attended the conference in March, and then he quickly snapped up 60 East Frisians, which he didn't have any land to put them on, so he's put them on my father's farm in Southland, and they're currently lambing in the cold. Not sure how I'm going for time. Just about there? Okay. So the time is right to become the world's leaders in sheep milk in New Zealand. I should probably note before I wrap up that I didn't actually visit Australia, but you've got quite a significant sheep dairy just an hour and a half out of Melbourne called Meredith's, and then the rest of your industry is very, very tiny. So there's an opportunity for you here in Australia too. But the time is right for New Zealand to become the world leaders in sheep milk. It's healthy, it's traditional, and it's fashionable. My grandfather made his money trading wool. My father made made a lot of money selling meat. And I guess in my generation, I believe that I'm going to be an ambassador for the sheep milk industry. Thank you. Oh, I should probably say, I want to give credit to, I want to give credit to Nuffield. They took a bit of a leap of faith with me as a marketer, I guess. But I want to thank you for investing in me, Nuffield, and I want to thank all of our sponsors. I'm obviously from farming stock, but if we don't have our eye on what the market wants, and if we aren't connecting with marketers, then we can never gain the value and high amounts of return that we need in order to capture global economic success.